Today we're in beautiful Sedona, Arizona, reviewing the Bird 029. On this review, I'm going to take this bike through a variety of terrain to see where it excels and where it doesn't excel. Bird markets this as an all-rounder, kind of a low travel, slack enduro feel without the massive fork, which I like shorter travel on my hardtails because lots of travel makes it ride like a stapler, and it just kind of, the geo changes so much, I prefer shorter travel. So we're running 130 mil travel today. This will take 120 to 140. For all the details, including weight and true geometry measurements, you can head over and check out the first look video where I measured all that stuff. Let's go hit the trail and see what this thing rides like. So this bike has a same size reach as the chainstay, 437 reach, 435 chainstay. That means it's quite neutrally balanced. At least that's usually what it means. Let's see if it rides that way. And what I mean by neutrally balanced is to get traction on the front wheel, you don't really need to get over the front and weight it real heavy. You can just stay neutral in the bike and the front's weighted. A little bit longer chainstay, but because it's a slightly shorter reach than what I normally run, it's still easy to pick up the front. Wow, for a 63.5 degree head angle, it's handling this mellow trail pretty well, actually. A lot of times we probably put too much emphasis on chainstay length. It's a little bit of a bear in the technical moves like that where they just kind of sneak up on you and you got some stair steps to get up. So I think people are really gonna like this that don't love to get over the front. It's an interesting take on geometry. I think newer riders are especially going to love it, or people that are coming from an older bike. Yeah, so on this bike I just kind of sit back and don't move my body front and back too much, and the weight balance seems to be right on that. Humans are amazing at adapting, and we can get used to any geometry, but the heart of a frame and how it rides is the geometry and its stiffness. So that's what I focus on my reviews. The front end's a little bit wandery on these mellow climbs. Not a little, it's wandery. 63.5 degree head angle will do that. This bike seems to want to be ridden at full tilt everywhere. It's pretty comfortable at these slower speeds. You just got to get used to the wandery front end. And after 2 or 3 rides, you adapt quite well. Got good get up and go. You're not going to mistake it for a steel frame. It doesn't feel as radical as I thought it would when I measured the geo. It is slack. Chainstay's fairly long, but that shorter reach gives it a little playful feel. You can pop that front up. If I size up to a medium large, I would feel long and stretched out. It's a pretty balanced ride though, I like it. I wish the stack was a little taller for my personal preferences, and I am getting pedal strikes even with 165 cranks. That bottom bracket's low. The first thing you notice when you hop on this is how slack the seat tube is. So to me, it feels like you're pedaling behind the bottom bracket. Just feels like your hips are way back, like over the rear axle. A lot of people love that, but for where I live, I really prefer a steeper seat angle. So I've slid the seat all the way forward and it feels pretty good. This bike definitely needs modern riding technique where you lean the bike to turn. It's so slack, you can't just stay vertical and turn with the bars, or you'll be washing out like crazy. But the front wheel is really well balanced and really well weighted with those longer stays. You just kind of stay in the center of the bike and everything has traction where it needs to be. Let's pick up the pace a little. All right, we got a little more excitement, a little more speed up here. I'm impressed with how easy it is to pop this thing around with that longer stay. Corners well. The geo works out nicely. This is just a reminder not to base all of your geo assumptions off head angle or chainstay length. It's all a combination that comes into play. This thing surprisingly loves to manual and play around. All right, let's try a steep, punchy climb. See how wandery that front end gets. I love this route. It's got a little bit of everything. I wish the seat tube was a little bit steeper to just keep my weight a little further forward. So on bikes, when you sit back and you're seated climbing, the front wants to lift. To combat that, you slide forward on your seat and pressure the nose of your saddle. That keeps the front end down. Well, running a steeper seat tube angle naturally does that. A little bit wandery, not terrible. This bike is surprisingly versatile with how balanced the geo is. Really good geometry balance. I want a little bit higher rise. I do feel a little bit hunched over. It works well with the 130 travel fork though. It feels nice. It feels like you can ride it hard like a big enduro bike, but it doesn't have that fork dive that a 160 hardtail has. Okay, here we go. A little slick rock climb up. Yeah, it's nice and balanced. The people that don't love steep seat tubes are gonna love this thing. See how this does on this tough stuff. Oh yeah, that's good. That's a great little bike. I like it. Let's take this down a little steep roller over here. It should be very composed. Yeah, super easy. Now we're venturing into the Black Diamond terrain, where I think this bike will really wake up. This bike surprised me how well it does in the blue and even green terrain. Green terrain, it's a little bit floppy on the steering, but you get used to that pretty quickly. All right, this is a little bonus move. Felt pretty good on this. I didn't quite have the reach I'm used to where I can just really get over the front, so I kind of had to stay back a little bit, but it worked well. This geometry works really well. It's different than what I normally ride, but it's not hard to adjust to at all. And I think it's really cool what they got going on here. It does offer a different ride feel. Really impressed with this little bird. Fun little bike, and it feels light and zippy. You're not gonna mistake it for an XC bike or even like a kind of mellow trail bike. It feels like a short travel enduro bike, and that's what it is. Woo! I don't feel quite as confident as I do on my long bikes. I can't quite get over the front as much, but I feel like if you're riding somewhere like the UK, where you're not over the front quite as much because it's so slippery, I'll bet this really handles well. This will be great on flow. Woo, what a ride. All right, I'm heading over to another part of the trail network. Got a sustained climb here. It does not have a XC trail bike feel on the climbs. Feels like you're climbing a chopper. That 63-degree head angle is meant for the downs. It'll do it. You just fight it. And you need really good core strength and balance to climb a slack bike. But you'll adjust. If this were your only bike in 2 weeks, you get used to it and then everything else would feel weird. So seated, the effective top tube feels quite long. Part of that's with how low the bars are. And then standing feels a little bit shorter than I'm used to, but not massively. I think fast flowy trails with jumps, trail centers, Bentonville, man-made rollers and little jumps and things you can just cruise around on. I think this thing would really wake up there. There aren't many hardtails meant for what we're riding today. But that's kind of the purpose. I like to take them a little out of their element to see where they fall apart and where they still represent themselves well. The bottom bracket is quite low on this. I've gotten far more pedal strikes than I normally do. It doesn't particularly feel low when you're coasting and going downhill. I'm just noticing it with the pedal strikes. Yeah, I'm kind of fighting for my balance on that stuff. Look, let's be honest, this bike's not meant for that. But kind of lumpy, slow speed technical, the front end starts wandering, and I'm just sawing at the bars, fighting to stay vertical. Not my all-time #1 Sedona tech climber favorite, but that's not what it's meant for. The geometry naturally weights both wheels evenly. It's not binary maniac playful, but it's surprisingly playful for a 435 chainstay bike. Yeah, good all-rounder. I think a lot of people are gonna love this. It definitely wants to go faster. It wakes up the faster you go. It's not a super harsh frame, but it's not a supple frame either. These Spinergy wheels are doing a lot to help take out the sting, but it's still a rough ride compared to a steel frame. A good steel frame, I should say. All right, we're dropping into the short, spicy, I'm gonna call it a Black Diamond Plus section here. This is hard on a hardtail in the dry loose conditions. Technique you need to clean this on a hardtail. This is where you feel a 160 fork just riding like a stapler, just successive big steps and hits. Yeah, this bike's a little in over its head on this stuff, but it's doing it. Whew. That back end is bouncy, it's stiff. It's doing it. It's not quite as composed as like a Switch 9er or a Hanso ESD or the Binary Maniac. It felt a little bit less confidence than I love. Surprised I got that. So at the slow speed technical stuff, this thing's a little overwhelmed, but for what it's meant for, kind of flow trails, trail centers, man-made bike parks, like crank it up at Whistler, this bike would be awesome on it. And it's easy to ride because you don't have to consciously weight the front. Switchbacks, tight turns, slow speeds like this, you're just fighting it just a little. Oh, it's fun on the flow, and when it picks up speed, likes to get airborne. Fun little bike. Found a nice little watering hole to cool down off on my ride. Time to summarize my thoughts. We've been able to take this on a bunch of different terrain to kind of feel what this bike does well and where it's not quite as at home. And that's the purpose of my reviews, is to explain to you where it excels and where it's a little bit lacking, so that you can decide if this is a good fit for you and your trails. I'm impressed with this little bike. It's lightweight, it's zippy, it's not harsh like a Common Sol or a Canyon. It's not quite as soft as something like a Ragley. It's not as soft as something steel like a Switch 9er or even my Binary Maniac, my Titanium Maniac. It's not as supple and forgiving as those, but it's not a bone-jarring experience. This just goes to remind us that not all aluminum frames ride the same, not all steel frames ride the same. stiff but not harsh. If you want to pick my brain on any frame I've ridden and how stiff it is compared to another one, or if you want personalized bike advice and my recommendations for your local trails, I do that over on Patreon. I'd be happy to help you over there. Patreon.com/hardtailparty. We work together and I recommend a whole bunch of bikes that would be a good fit, and then we work together to narrow that list down till you end up with the perfect bike for your budget and riding style. It almost felt like an underforked enduro bike. The bottom bracket's pretty low. I think most people are going to want to run this 140 instead of 130 to bring the front end up a little bit, bring the bottom bracket up a little bit, but the reach is going to be short. The geometry works really well. It's very different from how I design bikes, and it's very different from what I personally choose, but it was easy to ride, and it was surprisingly good. Once your speed's up above 10 or 15 miles an hour, it kind of wakes up. If you're kind of picking your way through switchbacks or chunky climbs or slow speed kind of trialsy stuff, I was fighting it, especially that really slack head tube. But once it picks up speed and it's kind of flowing, it's happy. And I think the perfect place for this is fast flow trails with jumps and drops, places where your momentum's high and then you have to turn around and pedal back up. It's not a bad pedaler at all. I felt like on really steep climbs that slacken out the effective seat tube even more, it did feel like a long distance to the bars for me, so I've slid my saddle all the way forward. But I'm impressed. It's a fun little bike. I haven't ridden a UK hardtail that I didn't enjoy, and this was a really enjoyable experience. It's not my top pick for Sedona, but it is a great option for a lot of people that are going to be riding hardtails in blue and bluish black terrain, which is most people. If you're in the States and you're interested in getting one of these UK hardtails, I've got a link to the bike bondsman down below who sent this to me. Personally, I wouldn't mind another water bottle mount in here for living in the desert, but for most people that's going to be totally fine. I think it is goofy that it's got these bosses over here. I have no idea why. I love the full external cable routing. These Spinergy MXX wheels really gave it a nice damped ride feel. I've been able to ride these wheels back to back with other wheels, and they definitely took a little bit of the sting out of this frame. So with a stiff wheel set, this would ride like a stiff bike, but these wheels helped. But even the most supple wheel set in the world is not going to make a super stiff bike ride great. I think this is a fantastic little hardtail. I love UK hardtails. They've got something special going on. And if you're open to the idea of aluminum, I think this could be a really great option for people that are looking for flow, looking to charge hard, but maybe save the really bumpy, rowdy, technical stuff for their full suspension. As always, thanks for watching, everybody. If you need bike consultation or advice, or you want to pick my brain on the build for your bird frame that you just built up, and you want to know my recommendations on fork, crank, wheels, whatever, become a patron today. That helps support this channel. This video was not paid for by anybody. Bird did not pay me to review this. Bike Bondsman did not pay me to write this. These are my own original thoughts so that you can be more informed when purchasing your next bike. Thanks for watching, everybody. There's a party in the mountains, and you're invited.